So this is what it sounds like. And then I went even more crazy in the next bit and sort of really went for a lot of cycle of fifths to end up on the dominant chord. So we're back to our A minor, but immediately then I go here. So hi, hello and welcome to my new video series on basically how to jazz up classical pieces. This is all the stuff that I really wish that somebody had shown me years ago. You know, I was always a classical musician and I could noodle around kind of playing what sounded like jazz on the guitar. Guitar is sort of so much easier to play jazz on by ear. My mum was a jazz singer, so you know I always grew up with the sound of jazz. I just had no idea really what it was, and I could bluff my way with jazz. Like I did actually play some jazz piano for a big band once, but I always felt like a fraud that I was going to get found out, and you know I was just basically using my ear and having no idea what I was doing. So you know, one of the things that I really wish that I'd been able to do all my life, I'd always wanted to be able to jazz up classical music. You know, like I loved people who did it, like Jacques Lussier, and there's loads of really good Polish jazz pianists who jazz up Chopin, and it just always blew me away when I heard what jazz people did with classical music. So what I basically want to spend the next few videos doing is showing you the kinds of things that I use when I do my own jazz arrangements. So if you've not heard them, do go and listen to the jazz arrangements that I've done on YouTube. I'll leave links in the description. I think I've done a pretty good job. You know, have a listen and tell me what you think. Actually, as it happens, this Kawai digital piano, the first thing that I properly was able to arrange in the jazz style, basically to cut a long story short, kind of on a slight detour, I went to a jazz workshop really near to me by a jazz guitarist, and it just suddenly unlocked loads of stuff that had been like a complete mystery to me, and suddenly I was like, oh, that's what everyone's doing. And because of that, it gave me the confidence to sort of follow a path of like, oh, it's this, it's that. And then the very first piece that I arranged into jazz was this Chopin prelude, and I arranged it into jazz. And then there was a competition in a magazine that had this piano as the prize, and I'd just seen this piano in a music shop and thought I really would like that piano. So basically the competition was to arrange an existing piece in a different style of music. So I was like, okay, I'll enter, you know, with this jazzed up Chopin prelude, and I won the piano. So I was like, okay, I'm onto something here, you know. So I've been doing progressively more complicated jazz arrangements since then, and I've got some really good ones on the way to show to you guys. There's one of Puccini La Bohème. Anyway, I'm going on and on. So, you know, you guys just want to get to the good stuff. Basically, the very first thing that I'm going to show is to look for dominant chords, and where you have a dominant chord, you basically treat it. So I'm going to go on a slight detour here. Basically, jazz, one of the fundamental, and I'm overgeneralizing here, but one of the massive differences between classical music and jazz is that classical music, if you're into Schenkerian analysis, I try not to go down that rabbit hole too much, but there was this academic theorist about music who basically said that all classical music is basically this. So 1C, 5/7, 1. They're all classical music, all of it, all the Western classical tonal music is basically some complicated form that can be boiled down to this, which is the tonic in second inversion, the dominant seventh that resolves to the root, to the tonic. So I think that there's a lot to this. There's not everyone agrees with this, but I think this is actually in many ways quite useful. This sort of Schenkerian analysis way of, looking for that basic framework, and then everything else is just sort of an embellishment of that. Now, jazz is really about a minor 2, a dominant 7/5, and then a tonic. So basically, say we're in the key of C major, the 2 is going to be a D minor 7. The dominant, the 5, so we've got D minor 7. The 5 is then going to be like a G7. And then to go to the 1, let's resolve to a major 1. That's going to be a major 7th. So, whereas Schenkerian analysis would say you've got a you've got a C major. C majors are root, are tonic. Not root, the tonic. So Schenkerian analysis would say everything boils down to C major second inversion. Then it goes to G7. Then it goes to C. So instead of that, pretty much most people agree on this. The root of most of jazz would be D minor 7. That's your 2 minor. Then you go to your 5, which is going to be G7, which then resolves to something like C major 7, which is your tonic. So what you can do is, still using the key of C major, if you see a G7 chord, something that does that. So let's take our Schenkerian thing. Let's say that you've got a tonic, then you've got the dominant, then you've got the tonic. What you could do is, to turn it into jazz, you take the 5, you take the G7, and where that would be, you have D minor 7, G7, and then C. So if we did this, we start off with the same C major second inversion, and then instead of going there, we would do this. We would go C major second inversion, then the 2, the D minor 7, the G7, and then the C major. So, classical, jazz. So that's basically what I'm covering today. Now, I do have sheet music of all of the stuff that I'm about to do, which is with Elise. I basically, most of the time when I ask my students, I'm going to show you how to jazz something up. I'm going to show you basically chord substitution theory, or reharmonizations, or reharms, as like cool hip jazz people like to call them, reharms. When I ask my students, what should we do it on? Name a piece. Elise comes up a lot. So yeah, let's choose Elise. So what I've done with Elise, and also I'm going to show you how to do this with the Chopin Etude that goes. So I'm going to show you like how this works with that as well. All of the sheet music you can download. I'm going to leave a link in the description below. So the first thing to do to turn this into jazz is just to take the tune. Now you could think of all of this as the tune, but basically I'm calling the tune what was in the right hand. So for me, just for the sake of this jazz exercise, this is the tune. So I wrote that down, and then the next step after that is to write down what the chords are. Now this bit here is kind of ambiguous, doesn't need to have a chord with it. It's just this on its own. It's kind of ambiguous, but here, A minor, E major, A minor, ambiguous, A minor, E major, A minor, C major, G7, A minor, E. Now, by the way, before I go any further, I'm going to also make available a crib sheet for all the foundations that you need to know to basically do this lesson, which means that you're going to need to know at least 4 different types of seventh chords. So I'm very, very quickly recap them here, but I'm going to have a crib sheet for you to look at. Even advanced classical students can be a bit rusty with these. If it's sort of going a bit too fast for you, go to someone else's tutorial video to learn about what the different kinds of seventh chords are, or let me know in the comments that you'd like me to sort of give a little bit more foundation to this. So basically, you've got 4 really important kind of seventh chords that you need to know. So basically, if you have a major triad, let's say we're in the key of C, major triad, C, E, G, major triad. Again, if you don't know all your triad types, go learn what they are from a different video, or let me know if you'd like me to do a video that covers this. So, C major triad. If we then add a major seventh on top of that, we've got a major seventh. So the major seventh is a major triad with the interval of a major seventh. So we've got C, E, G, B, that is a major seventh. If we have a major triad with a minor seventh interval, so C, E, G, major triad, B flat, the minor seventh interval, this is a dominant seventh. This can sometimes be a little bit of a weak point for even some advanced students. But basically, I may cover this in a different tutorial, why we call this a dominant seventh, why this is so important. For the moment, I'm not going to go into it. It's a little bit of a rabbit hole I don't want to go down. But major triad, minor seventh, C, E, G, B flat, this is a dominant seventh. When we write it down in chord notation, it's just 7. When you see just 7, in the beginning, get in the habit of going, that is dominant seventh, not just seventh, but dominant seventh. So major seventh, this is usually notated with a little triangle and a 7, or MAJ, but I like little triangle 7, major seventh, dominant seventh, 7, dominant seventh. If you have a minor triad, C, E flat, G, and a minor seventh interval, so this is C, E flat, G, B flat, this is a minor seventh, which is little m, 7. And then if you have a diminished triad, C, E flat, G flat, and B flat, this is half diminished. Some people call it minor 7 flat 5. I don't like that because it's sort of really 2 pieces of information that your brain has to digest. It's like minor 7 flat 5, so that's 2 things. If you just see C half diminished 7th, the 7th is kind of a little bit redundant because if the moment you hear half diminished, it can only be a 7th. There's no other kind of half diminished. So the moment you go C half diminished, you know it's a diminished triad with a minor 7th interval. C, E flat, G flat, B flat. So those are the fundamental chord types. By the way, half diminished, it's a little circle with a line through it. So you can download the crib sheet with these things on it in the description below. So anyway, we've had our fur release with the basic classical chords. A minor, E major, A minor, A minor, E major, A minor. Now, by the way, I'm just sort of doing this, spreading in both hands. You could do this, it won't sound as good, but you could do this. And then in the left hand, you could do closed voicing A minor, E major in the left hand triad, A minor in the left hand triad, and so on. So it doesn't matter how you play it. You can do anything. You could do this. As long as you're basically using the notes from that triad, you can do whatever you want. Anyway, the moment that we move to jazz, really it's a bit of a cliche, but a good place to start turning something into jazz is just to immediately put 7th chords everywhere. So where you have a minor, you basically put a minor 7th. So A minor 7th, immediately jazz. Isn't that jazz? Much more jazz. Now, when we went to the E, what key are we in? We're in the key of A minor. So when we're in the key of A minor, we want to look out for the dominant. The dominant is the fifth degree of the scale. So the fifth degree of the scale from A is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is E. So every time we see a chord of E, chances are that is going to be a dominant seventh. The dominant seventh is the seventh on the dominant. So here is the tonic. The tonic is the 1. Tonic 1, A minor, dominant E. This is going to be a dominant seventh. So we go da 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 A minor 7, da da E7, da 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 A minor 7, da 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 A minor 7, da 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 E dominant 7, A minor 7. Then we go to what was C. We're going to turn into a C major 7. Back to a G dominant. Not back to. So. A G major 7 just sounds wrong here. To stay in the key of C major and turn that G major chord into a 7th, it makes more sense to use the dominant 7th because we stay in the key signature. You could just try either. So if we go the C major, and then you're not sure if you go to a dominant 7th or a major 7th, try both. Here's a major 7th. Ugh, that just doesn't work. So if that didn't work, let's try a dominant 7th. So the C major 7, G dominant 7th. Yeah, that just sounds right. Now this is something that I tell my students a lot. Basically, if you're not sure exactly what the theory is, just use your ear. Just try it. Just play it. Try it out and just see what works. Anyway, so we've got to a G7. A minor 7, and then E dominant 7th. And it immediately sounds a little bit more jazz. Now bear in mind that these are sort of baby steps. These are like the very beginning steps. And by the time we get to the end of this, it's going to sound a lot more jazz. So don't expect that instantly we're going to make, incredibly sophisticated sounding jazz. Now, something else that I wish that someone had shown me ages ago, such an easy way to start playing jazz, is to basically start with the idea of shells. Now, shells in jazz is basically the 1, the 3, and the 7. You don't play the 5 because if the 5 is unaltered, i.e. it's not flat, it's not sharp, it's just a normal 5, the other notes imply the 5. You don't need it. So if I play... So here's the shell. We've got the and by the way, for this lesson, let's treat a shell that the left hand plays the 1 and the 7, whatever kind of 7 it is. It might be a major 7th, a minor 7th, whatever it is. The left hand does the 1 and the 7. So in A minor, you've got the 1, and then you've got the flat 7, the minor 7 for the left hand, which is a G. This is the left hand part of the shell. The right hand part of the shell is going to play the 3. That's the minor 3rd. So this is a minor 7th shell. Doesn't have a 5 in it. So you've got the 1 and the 7 in the left hand, the 3's in the right hand. So it's a 1, a flat 7 left hand, flat 3 in the right hand. This is your shell, and then the melody always goes on the top. So melody on the top. Now, if I add the 5, I could add the 5 in the right hand. You'll hear it really doesn't sound that different. I can now leave it back out again. It's not that different. I can add the 5 in the left hand. Or I can leave it out. So, again, I wish someone had said this to me ages ago. Classical music tends to have textures that are quite, they've got lots of notes. So if I'm playing an A minor chord, I could do something like, we have this kind of texture a lot. When you play jazz, jazz tends to sound better when you simplify the texture. And it's a really difficult thing to do when you come from a classical background, to actually take as many notes out as you can. and still have something that works. So this is like the jazz approach. The classical people might play something more like this. Jazz people will just do this. And it took me a while, but after a while I ended up thinking, yeah, it does sound better when you just simplify the texture down. Anyway, so in the sheet music that I'm giving away for free, you see for Elise shells with seventh chords. Shell, A minor 7. Shell, so here's the shell, 1, 7, 3, with the melody on top. Now, when I get to the next one, that sounds a little bit bare to me. That does sound a little bit bare. So what I've done is I've put the fifth in brackets, because there I've used my ear, and my ear tells me here is one of the exceptions where actually the fifth would help the texture a little bit. But it doesn't need to be in there, which is why I put it in brackets. Shell, shell, shell. And then here, it sounds a bit bare. It sounds very bare if it's only shell. So, by the way, when the melody is the 3, there's no point doubling it really. It's fine. Usually when you play shells and the melody is the 3, that's it. You just play those 3 notes. But it sounds a little bit bare. So again, I've put the fifth in brackets. Shell with the melody. Now here is one of those examples where the melody is the 3, so the left hand is just 1 and 7, the right hand is the 3, and then we have the shell with the melody on top. So that's it, it's just for Elise, shells where I've just turned all the chords into 7th chords. Now, the next one, this is where it starts to get jazzier, because I'm looking for wherever there's been a dominant 7th, and where there's been a dominant 7th, in the space where there was a dominant 7th. So for example, if we look at it, so here there's a whole bar of E7. Instead of having a whole bar of E7, then I've preceded the E7 by what would have been the minor 2 that leads to the 5 dominant. So if E is the 5, E is the 5, that must mean that A is the 1 and B is the 2. So we're looking for a B minor. So where in the shells with 7th chords, where we had a whole bar of E7, we're now going to split that bar into B minor 7, which is your 2. It's your 2 minor, and the E7. So it's going to go like this. A minor 7, the tonic. Where we did go to the 5, we now go to the 2, which is B minor 7, E7, A minor 7, and then I'll play it again. And it already has maybe a little bit of a Latin vibe to it. So yeah, I won't get to mucking around with rhythm yet, but bear in mind that at some point you can start to pull the rhythm around, although I'll try not to do too much of that in this lesson. So carrying on from where we got to, so I'm now on the next line, and then, okay, so then we go to the next section, C major. Now we did go to G7, so where we had G7, G is the 5, this is an easy one. If G is the 5, that must mean that D is the 2. So yeah, because if G is the 5, this must mean that C is the 1, D minor is going to be the 2. So have a listen to this. We've got C major 7, D minor 7, G7, A minor 7, and then where instead of going to E7, I'm going to go to B minor 7 and then E7. So I'm just going to play that through for you. So now we can get even fancier, because a very, very common substitution that we get in jazz, especially, but not always, but especially when we land, when the 1 is minor, excuse me, we'll have a bit of tea. So when the 1 is minor, when the tonic is minor, it's very, very common that the minor 2 is half diminished. And that the 5-7, the dominant 7, the 5, is a dominant 7 flat 9. The flat 9 in the dominant 7th is the same note as the flattened 5th in the half diminished 2. And it'll just be easier if I show you. So here we've got, this is on the next page, we've got the same A minor 7. And then, now here, we've got the shell, 1, 7, flat, well, 1, flat 7, flat 3, but I've added to the right hand, and it's usually best to put this in the right hand, the altered 5th. I've put the flattened 5th in the right hand. So instead of having F sharp, which would be the normal 5th, we've got an F. So if we took the B up an octave, we've got a diminished triad, but the B's down here. So diminished triad, minor 7th. This is a half diminished. This is B half diminished. The difference from the minor is that we have an F. The F is the flattened 5th that's in the diminished triad. We've got that shell with the melody on top. So remember this F is the new note, which is the defining feature of the half diminished. Now when we go to the dominant 7th 5, which is the E, if I keep that F, that is the flat 9. E is the 1, F is the flat 9. I'm not going to go into extensions and numbers above 8. I'm going to leave that for a different video and explain why we say flat 9 and not flat 2. There's very, very good reasons for this. I'm not going to go into it because we'll just run out of time. But all you need to know is that this flattened 5th, you leave it there for the next chord, which for classical people is like a flat 2, but really for jazz people it's a flat 9. And then let's carry on. A minor 7, B half diminished, E dominant 7 flat 9, and then C major 7. Instead of the D minor 7, we're going to go for D half diminished. And then we go to G dominant 7 flat 9, very jazzy there. And then I've put in brackets, it sounded a bit weird if I didn't put the 5th in the texture here, because we've started thickening up the texture from the previous chord. So we want to keep the same kind of consistency. Anyway, so A minor 7, and then B half diminished, E dominant 7 flat 9. Now, this is just to basically whet your appetite. I'm not going to explain all of this, except that to say that the way we kind of could think about this is that in the place of just having a normal, boring dominant 7th, we're approaching it from the chord that was a 5th above it, which was minor. We could just do a whole cycle of 5ths that lead up to the dominant 7th. So, the easiest way is just to show you. A minor 7, I added the 5th in there, let me not do that. So, here, what I've done is instead of just going to the B half diminished, I've gone one backwards to go from a chord that leads us to B, to any chord of B, by going to a chord a 5th above it. And so because of the melody note, and for other reasons I won't go into, I settled on having a half diminished. You don't need to worry about why. All you need to sort of think about is that the F sharp is a 5th above B, which goes down to B, which goes down to E, which goes down to A. So here we've got so we've got A minor, Then you've got a chord which is F sharp, B, E, A. And I'm just running through a cycle of fifths. This is one of the most easy ways to start making things sound like jazz. To just suddenly throw in a cycle of fifths that takes you to a target chord. So this is what it sounds like. And then I went even more crazy in the next bit and sort of really went for a lot of cycle of fifths to end up on the dominant chord. So here we're back to our A minor, but immediately then I go here. And all I'm doing, if I work backwards from the A minor that I just got to, the chord before was an E, the one before that was a B, the one before that is an F sharp, the one before that is a C sharp, the one before that is a G sharp. I'm just going up in fifths, that's all I'm doing, or going down in fifths if I'm going forwards. So, from the second line, and then the rest of it's all the same. Now I'm not going to explain why I chose to have a G sharp 9, a C sharp 7, sharp 9, and all those things. Those are things that I'll get to in future videos. I'm just whetting your appetite that this cycle of fifths thing is really, really useful. So if we take the cycle of fifths thing into, let's say, Chopin Etude Opus 10 number 3, which is this thing. And then I'm not going to go any further than that. So, first thing, what I've done with this is I've kept the right hand intact. So, I'm not going to play it like just a melody and just shells. I'm actually going to keep more or less this texture going. But in the left hand, I'm doing kind of shells, or I'm shoehorning it in a bit more. I'm not going to explain it too much. It's just basically an illustration of cycles of fifths. So, instead of just having an E major chord, it's going to be an E major 7. And then I'm taking that major 7th down to the 6th, which is quite a common thing to do in jazz. And then I'm going to G sharp minor, C sharp dominant 7, F sharp half diminished, and then B dominant 7 flat 9, lovely and jazzy that, E major 7, E6, and then E. So all I'm doing, like if we look back at the original, it's E major, B dominant 7, E major. So that's a long time just to spend on the dominant. And all I've done is in the 4 beats, the 4 quavers that we've been on the dominant, what I'm doing for the 3 quavers before the last quaver, I'm coming down a cycle of fifths. So it's a B dominant 7. So if we go up a fifth, up another fifth, and up another fifth, that is G sharp. So G sharp, down a fifth, down a fifth, down a fifth. And then what I also did was when I got to the B7, I decided to make this a B dominant 7 flat 9 and proceed it by the minor 2 turned into a half diminished chord. Same as I did with for Elise. So this is like really the basics, the absolute basics of where to start with reharmonization, with chord substitutions. The next lessons are going to go into a lot more sophistication about things that we can do to really make this sound jazzy. But this is like absolutely the foundations. So I really hope that you enjoyed that. Like I said, all of this is free to download. You can get the links in the description below. Do please leave comments. I am teaching several students how to take classical music and arrange it into jazz. If you're interested in lessons, do contact me. You can get my contact details through my website, heartofthepiano.com, and again I'll leave a link for that. If you've got any questions, if there's anything that's unclear, any comments, do please leave comments, and I'll see you in the next video. So thanks very much, and bye.